North Fox Island, part of the Fox Islands in Lake Michigan, became a focal point in the 1970s for a child pornography ring. Research indicates that Francis Sheldon, a wealthy individual that's worth millions with ties to Ann Arbor, Charlevoix, and Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, purchased the island and established Brother Paul's Children's Mission as a cover. This charity, ostensibly for remedial tutoring and emergency care for runaways, was a front for exploiting boys, flying them to the island via Sheldon's private plane for abuse and pornography production. The breakthrough came in July 1976 when Gerald Richards, a gym teacher from Port Huron, Michigan, was arrested for assaulting a 10-year-old boy. Richards, who also moonlighted as a magician and was an aspiring politician running for county commissioner, had taken 4 students from his school to the island, where they were abused and photographed. His arrest, following a boy's report to his mother, led to the exposure of the entire ring, with Richards implicating Sheldon and others. The operation involved several key figures. Francis Sheldon, the proprietor, a Yale graduate. All right, that's where the skull and bones is from. The tomb, okay, and I can almost guarantee you there was a skull and bones connection there. A former Michigan Air National Guard member who used his wealth to insulate himself from prosecution. Oh, listen to this, folks. Dyer Grossman from Carmel, New York. He taught science at prestigious schools and held positions like Vice President of Brother Paul's Children's Mission, Executive Director of the Ocean Living Institute, and Youth Director of the Church of the New Revelation. Adam Starchild, involved in offshore finance, he helped set up front organizations including the Educational Foundation for Youth of Illinois, allegedly tax dodges for sexual activities involving boys. Gerald Richards, the teacher, the recruiter whose arrest was pivotal and who confessed to destroying Sheldon's pornography collection to protect his family. Other potential associates include Christopher Bush, a subscriber to the ring, and possibly other wealthy individuals through those specific names beyond these are less documented. Francis Sheldon's escape and invasion as the investigation closed in, he fled to Europe in 1976. Records suggest he went to France, marrying Aline Giselle Gabi to obtain French citizenship, then moved to Amsterdam, Netherlands, where he continued his activities unhindered by U.S. authorities. Despite criminal warrants issued in December of 1976, including a federal fugitive warrant, Sheldon was never extradited. Legal proceedings, such as Fakar versus Sheldon in 1987, note disputes over extradition attempts, but it seems likely that his citizenship and the complexities of international law allowed him to evade justice until his death on July 9th, 1996, and we all know where he's at now. All right, it says here the lack of extradition may stem from the U.S. not pursuing it vigorously or legal barriers such as the Netherlands' policies on extraditing citizens, though this remains speculative given the redacted nature of FBI files. The Oakland County child killer case, active from 1976 to 1977, involved the abduction and murder of at least 4 children: Mark Stebbins, Jill Robinson, Christine Myalek, and Timothy King. The investigation, the largest of its kind at the time, uncovered links to the North Fox Island pedophile ring. Christopher Bush, a convicted pedophile from Bloomfield Hills, was a key suspect known to have subscribed to Sheldon's pornography materials. Bush was arrested in 1977 for child sexual assault, confessed, but was released on a plea deal. He committed suicide in November 1978. I'll be honest with you, I don't think it was suicide. Kind of like Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself neither. It says, with suspicious circumstances, including no gunshot residue and a sketch resembling victim Mark Stebbins found in his apartment. DNA testing in 2012 exonerated Bush, but families and investigators like Marnie Keenan and the Snow Killings, a book that's written, argue for his involvement, citing his connections to the ring in the presence of hair from Vincent Gunnels, a victim of Bush, on one of the bodies. The evidence leans towards a possible network, with the killer potentially victimized or involved in the island's activities, though the case remains unsolved. It sounds absolutely like there's some satanic stuff going on at North Fox Island. The case and its connection to the Oakland County child killer left a lasting impact on Michigan, with communities haunted by the scale of abuse and murder. The lack of justice for Sheldon and the unresolved killer case underscores systemic challenges in prosecuting transitional crimes, especially in the 1970s. Investigative efforts like those by Marnie Keenan continue to seek closure for victims, families, with ongoing debates about cover-ups and the true extent of the network. I think it's a whole lot worse than people can even begin to understand. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a journey into the shadows, an expose that peels back the picturesque facade of one of Michigan's most beloved treasures, Mackinac Island. You've heard the tales of horse-drawn carriages, fudge shops, and historic charm, but beneath that veneer lies a sinister underbelly, a hub of human trafficking and child exploitation that preys on the innocent that's been shielded by the powerful and the elite. As we embark on this documentary, prepare to question everything you thought you knew about this island paradise, because the truth isn't just hidden, it's been deliberately buried. Let's start with the chilling case of two young sisters from Byron Center near Grand Rapids, Michigan, who vanished into the night on February 11th, 2019. 9-year-old Jenna Lynn Yitma and her 12-year-old sister, Alexis Lynn Yitma, were the subjects of an urgent endangered missing advisory issued by Michigan State Police. Their father, Joel Yitma, had failed to drop them off at school, spiriting them away instead to the remote shores of Mackinac Island. Found safe the next day at a local inn after a tip from an innkeeper, the official story painted it as a family dispute. But ask yourself this: why Mackinac Island? Why take vulnerable children to an isolated spot known for its seclusion and high-profile visitors in the dead of winter in a world where abductions feed into the darker networks? This incident raises red flags about how easily the island serves as a waypoint for those evading scrutiny. Fast forward to November 12, 2022, when the Mackinac Bridge, that iconic gateway to the Upper Peninsula, became the scene of a trafficker's downfall. Terrence Dante Clay, a 38-year-old from Comstock Park near Grand Rapids, was stopped by authorities after bridge workers spotted something suspicious. A 16-year-old girl hidden under a blanket in his back seat. This wasn't a joyride. Clay had lured the teen from a Grand Rapids park, pimped her out for sex, and was then transporting her north as his personal property. The Kent County Sheriff's Human Trafficking Task Force has been tipped off in October, leading to his arrest on charges of human trafficking, sex trafficking of a child, sexual exploitation, and distribution of child pornography. Convicted in May 2024 and sentenced to decades behind bars, Clay's case exposes the bridge as a literal conduit for evil, funneling victims towards isolated destinations like Mackinac Island, and who knows how many others have crossed undetected. But the rot runs deeper on the island itself. In October 2021, 27-year-old Matthew Bart Kowiak, a full-time resident of Mackinac Island, was arrested by the Michigan State Police Computer Crimes Unit and the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, charged with 10 counts of possessing aggravated child sexually abusive material. Bart Kowiak's case is a stark reminder that predators don't just visit, they live among the island's quaint streets. And he's not alone. Just months later, in December 2021, 33-year-old Scott Craig Castleline faced 5 counts of first-degree criminal sexual conduct with a victim under 13 years old. These aren't isolated perverts. They're symptoms of a system that attracts and protects the depraved. Now let's confront the numbers that the mainstream media glosses over. According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline and the Polaris Project, Mackinac Island ranks among Michigan's top hotspots for trafficking reports, right alongside Detroit, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan, and Lansing, Michigan. It's cited as the 5th largest city in the state for reported cases. Despite its tiny permanent population of 500 people, why? Because tourism swells the crowds to thousands daily, creating a perfect storm for exploitation. FBI statistics from 2016 alone show 8 violent crimes on the island, equating to a staggering 17 per 1,000 residents, far outpacing many urban areas. These include assaults and rapes, with sexual violence spiking amid the influx of visitors. Estimates suggest dozens, if not hundreds, are trafficked through Michigan annually, many funneled to or from Mackinac, including children as young as those in the cases we've uncovered. And remember, these are just the reported figures. The dark web of underground networks hides far more. These aren't random acts, they're threads in a grand tapestry woven by the elite. Mackinac Island isn't just a vacation spot. It's a trafficking nexus at the pinnacle of Michigan's shame, drawing the powerful who hide behind opulent facades. Whispers from survivors like Kathy O'Brien label it the Epstein Island of its day, a playground for politicians and moguls. Connections run to North Fox Island's infamous 1970s child porn ring run by millionaire Francis Sheldon, and even Interlochen Arts Camp where Jeffrey Epstein honed his predatory skills. Consider the parade of power players who graced its shores. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton frequented this island, who came as a first lady in waiting. Vice President Mike Pence shattered the island's car-free tradition in September 2019, rolling in with an 8-vehicle motorcade for the Republican Leadership Conference. Why the show of force on such a peaceful retreat? And they're far from alone. Think presidents Harry Truman, John F. Kennedy, Gerald Ford, the only sitting president to visit with First Lady Betty Ford. in tow, and George H.W. Bush, who came multiple times, First Ladies Barbara Bush, Laura Bush, and Lady Bird Johnson, senators like John McCain, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz, governors such as Jeb Bush and Gretchen Whitmer, moguls and celebrities including Rudy Giuliani, Carly Fiorina, Vince Vaughn, Bob Seger, Ice-T, Kid Rock, Ron Howard, Julia Roberts, Jennifer Aniston, Tom Cruise, Robert Redford, Jeff Daniels, Jane Seymour, Chris Hemsworth, Josh Duhamel, Josh Peck, and Jana Kramer, all drawn to this remote enclave for conferences and vacations. Even historical figures like Thomas Edison and Mark Twain, who Mark Twain helped found the Bohemian Grove and the Bohemian Club in California, set foot there. But today's gatherings at the annual Mackinac Policy Conference, packed with names like U.S. Chamber CEO Suzanne Clark, Dennis W. Archer Jr., Tom Barrett, Jocelyn Benson, Jack Bergman, and countless lobbyists reek of backroom deals. And what of the Grand Hotel, that gilded icon? Frequented by governors, senators, and international figures like the Trudeaus and the Mulroneys, could it conceal secrets within its lavish halls, tunnels, private mansions, and offshore accounts evoke enigmatic hints of deeper connections where the elite converge amid whispers of untold stories, leaving us to wonder what shadows linger as children vanish into silence. As we delve deeper, the veil thins, inviting us to uncover the mysteries that bind this island's allure to its darkest enigmas.
I appreciate what you're doing. It's about time somebody, really brought the reality of what went on in Mackinac Island to light. It's been going on my whole life, and people need to understand that we hear about Epstein Island, and Mackinac was the Epstein Island of its day back when. So, Epstein. People think all the answers are going to unfold with Epstein Island, and really, it's the thread that's going to start unraveling a much, much, much bigger picture that Mackinac has been tied into all along. It would help for people to understand exactly what Project Monarch is. The formula for MK Ultra mind control came into the U.S. in the wake of World War II, when we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the U.S. through Project Paperclip. With them came the formula for mind control. That's something everybody can research for themselves and understand that was a very serious turning point. We didn't win World War II. We just brought it into the U.S. And the mind control that was being used in Nazi Germany was then brought here and used in an even stronger way. So Monarch is a sub-project of MK Ultra, and that formula for mind control, trauma is the basis of it. It had been found through the Hitler-Himmler research. There's no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while their brain is still forming. What happens is we have this defense mechanism in our brain, and my father's sexual abuse of me started in infancy before I could think to know what he was doing was wrong. But my brain knew what was wrong. My brain knew that I was being violated, that I was enduring pain and suffocation. So it shut down neuron pathways in my brain and repressed that memory deep into the subconscious, while the rest of the mind developed and functioned normally. My father's sexual abuse extended into child pornography. More neuron pathways shut down and repressed into my subconscious. As more and more neuron pathways shut down, more free thought is lost. Without our conscious mind filter, the subconscious mind just takes information in without question, reason, logic, any kind of analysis to it at all. It's just information in. And then that information drives our thoughts and ultimately our actions going forward. My father's sexual abuse extended into trafficking me to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. That's where my mother had been trafficked because my grandfather owned that Blue Masonic Lodge. And the Hitler-Himmler research had found that when sexual abuse happens after numerous generations, children are born more compliant. They want to create a slave society agenda with a compliant society, and they thought the best way to do it is to sexually abuse children and abuse them for generations. Because after 3 generations, any knowledge base, abuse base, or belief system becomes autogenic in the brain. It's passed down genetically. We're born with that propensity. So when we understand that Project Monarch is a deliberate sub-project to use the multi-generational aspect, we can start to understand the familial abuse, why it's so pervasive, why so many parents sell their children into a trafficking situation. It's because their parents had done it, and their parents had done it, and their parents, and they're not thinking clearly anymore. What we need is a mass awareness to understand the components of mind control. Knowledge is our defense against mind control. When we understand it, we don't comply with it anymore. And that's what people are waking up to today. They're saying, hey, what is this sexualization of our children? Why is it so pervasive? Why is it going on in the school system? Why has human trafficking, particularly child sex trafficking, become the most lucrative business in the world? We got to open our eyes to what's going on in families now that have been conditioned to accept this kind of attitude. It is not a sexual preference, it's a control mechanism. And it's all about dumbing us down, shutting down the neuron pathways in our brain so that we can't think to say no to this handful of globalist perpetrators who are perpetuating what Adolf Hitler, George Bush, Joe Biden, numerous others, all these self-appointed, self-anointed global leaders that we see, term the New World Order. They call it other things too, but it's a globalist agenda. It's a slave society agenda. Mind control is the basis of it, and the sexualization of children, particularly for generations, is key to their success. That's why this is such important information for people to understand. We can defund this globalist agenda when we stop child sex trafficking. That's why it's so important when we look at things like Epstein Island, that we expand our thinking beyond just that one thread of this tapestry to understand it is a much bigger picture, and it involves a very deliberate plan of controlling humanity. And in my time, when I was a little bitty child, Mackinac Island was the Epstein Island of its time, and that's where I was taken to be used and abused by these global leaders while they decided how to use mind control against everybody. They were holding themselves accountable through blackmail. They always filmed what was going on in the rooms with the children, the sexual assault of children. If someone willingly participated, if they participated because they were coerced or bought off, however it was, if they were drugged, they were filmed with the children, and then they were held by that blackmail and forced to participate in this agenda. So when we understand this blackmail that's been going on, has been going on for generations now, we start looking beyond Epstein Island. We look beyond the Diddy parties to consider, wow, what is the point of all this? The point is to dumb down humanity and make us compliant. Yeah, it looked like family vacation. All the family in the family trucks are heading for a vacation is what it looked like. And nobody looks twice at something like that. They were going there very deliberately, knew what they were going for. Because when my father was caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mails, he was approached by one of the local politicians that I was trafficked to at my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge and told he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would sell me into MK Ultra mind control. So my father sold me into it and then followed their directions to take me here, take me there, whatever he needed to do. He happily did it and just believed that that was the way things should be because that local politician was Gerald Ford. Of course, Gerald Ford went on to become the unelected president of the United States. He was very much associated with so many other political powerhouses back in that day already. Guy Vanderjagt, who went on to he was head of the Republican National Committee, and Vanderjagt was another child predator, sexual abuser, part of the MK Ultra mess. And these perpetrators would meet at Mackinac Island, Michigan. They would get together, and they were global. It wasn't just whoever was local, but it was all the global leaders. It was the Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. It was, all that. Of course, we ended up with Henry Kissinger, and all these other people who were going there to Mackinac Island, Michigan, so that they could meet in secret. It's an island, for heaven's sake. So they could meet in secret. The way to get there on the ferries was very controlled. They could take people discreetly to places. There were people who were registered, those who weren't. The ferries would take people to other islands, like you had mentioned, like Beaver Island was a key one back then. And so we would arrive in Traverse City and get on the ferry and go to Mackinac and go to the governor's mansion and just look like every other tourist around there since we were a family unit. And then I would be taken in and used in MK Ultra, assaulted by these leaders, passed around like some kind of a party favor while they filmed it and held each other by the perversion by these blackmail tapes. So it was very horrific for me. And being Project Monarch was one of the keys, because the main thing they were discussing then was how they could generationally condition the population to start accepting pedophilia, to be more compliant, how to take over the school system, infiltrate the churches. These are all things that they talked about. I think the more satanic ritualistic end is recognized more like over at Bohemian Grove, but that was going on in Mackinac too. Yes, absolutely. There's no question about it, because that was going on back in my day even. And I was there in the early 60s, throughout the 60s really. And it was ongoing then. Then, of course, in later years, they came out with movies Somewhere in Time to use as a mind scramble for victims, that, oh no, you weren't there, you were just watching this movie. Because when the subconscious mind has no conscious mind filter, it doesn't have an ability to process information properly. So it's easy to fool the subconscious mind into believing, to blurring the line between fantasy and reality, to blurring the line between a movie and reality. The inability to connect thought through compartmentalized memory makes it impossible to have conscious awareness and a concept of time. Without a concept of time, you don't have an idea of distance. And without a concept of time, they can distort it any way they want, tell you that you're time traveling, no, you were somewhere in time, and that's just used as a subconscious manipulation very deliberately. So The fact that they filmed that at the Grand Hotel was very deliberate, was definitely used, like so many other scrambles are. But in the deprogramming process, it's easy to know, okay, what's a movie, what was reality. Reality has smells. TV doesn't smell. So you can tell the reality of a memory through olfactory senses and the other nuances of reality versus what's actually seen on a screen.
As we delve deeper into the enigmatic undercurrents of Mackinac Island, let's turn our gaze to a film that weaves romance with the impossible, the movie Somewhere in Time. Penned by Richard Matheson, this 1980 cinematic movie starring Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour isn't just a tale of love transcending eras, it's a portal into Matheson's fascination with the arcane and the occult. A narrative that echoes through the halls of the Grand Hotel and some whisper into the fractured minds of those ensnared by shadowy government experiments. Matheson, a master of the macabre, whose stories plunged into haunted realms and psychic disturbances, was deeply wrapped up in the occult, weaving themes of hidden knowledge and supernatural forces into his body of work. His novels like Hell House conjure depraved spirits and forbidden rituals, while Stir of Echoes explores hypnosis unlocking ghostly visions, threads of the supernatural that hint at forces beyond our grasp. This immersion in esoteric and occult ideas didn't emerge in a vacuum. It infused his writing, pushing an agenda that romanticizes the blurring of reality and the unseen, which some theorists argue aligns eerily with the mind-altering goals of programs like Project Monarch and MKUltra, where perception is weaponized for control. Echoes of this appear earlier in his 1962 Twilight Zone episode Little Girl Lost, where a child tumbles through a rift into a fourth dimension, a chilling metaphor for children vanishing into unseen worlds, inspired by Matheson's own daughter rolling under her bed in the middle of the night, and that is very strange indeed. It probes alternate realities, much like the temporal leaps in the movie Somewhere in Time. Both tales toy with slipping through invisible barriers, showcasing Matheson's persistent promotion of occult concepts that defy conventional logic, potentially serving as cultural groundwork for deeper manipulations that would be used in the future for perception in clandestine operations. Matheson's pull towards the Grand Hotel was profound. He rerouted his novel's setting from California's Hotel del Coronado to this Victorian bastion on Mackinac. Visiting the island repeatedly to capture its timeless aura, the film unfolds there, with Reeves' character employing self-hypnosis and a willed trance akin to occult rituals to propel himself backward through the ages. It's no mere plot device, it's a nod to esoteric practices where the mind bends reality, echoing ancient mysticism under a romantic guise and advancing themes that could subtly normalize the psychological tactics employed in MKUltra's arsenal. But for survivors like Kathy O'Brien, an escapee from CIA's MKUltra and its offshoot Project Monarch, this film wasn't entertainment, it was a tool of torment. O'Brien says she was subjected to trauma-based mind control from childhood. Her psyche shattered to create programmable altered identities in her accounts. Somewhere in Time served as a programming anchor, distorting her sense of chronology through time travel illusions. To break it down simply for anyone unfamiliar, imagine being so deeply manipulated that a movie's scenes feel like your own lived experiences, with handlers convincing you that events at the Grand Hotel were part of some cross-dimensional journey or just fictional movie moments bleeding into real life. This blurring of boundaries is a hallmark of MKUltra tactics, where the mind is tricked into confusing scripted fantasy with actual events. O'Brien has explained that true deprogramming reveals the difference. Real memories come with sensory details like smells that movies simply cannot replicate, helping victims reclaim what's genuine from the fabricated haze. Handlers allegedly used that movie to plant these false time travel narratives in her and others' minds, exploiting the Grand Hotel's frozen in time charm, horse-drawn carriages, no cars, Victorian splendor. To make the illusion feel authentic, most victims would be reinforced by heavy doses of LSD, barbiturates, and amphetamines, drugs known and documented in MK Ultra files to fracture reality and enforce obedience, slipping, tightening the chains of control without ever leaving the present. Today, the Grand Hotel enshrines this narrative, hosting annual Somewhere in Time weekends with screenings, costume galas, and tributes scattered like altars throughout its opulent spaces. Dedicated suites, gazebos from key scenes, and memorabilia displays that venerate the film's ethereal pull. Is it mere nostalgia, or does it perpetuate a subtle spell, keeping the island's secrets veiled in celluloid dreams? As we peer closer, the lines between fiction, memory, and manipulation begin to dissolve, urging us to question what other realities lurk just out of our reach.
So they would take me upstairs to the bedroom where I would be sexually assaulted, and there was always filming going on when I was taken into those bedrooms because, again, they wanted the blackmail videos. So that's how it was for me at Mackinac Island. It's where I met who would become my owner in MK Ultra Mind Control, U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. He became my owner when I was 13 years old. And he took over that through a horrific assault, brutal assault, extreme trauma at Mackinac Island, Michigan. So, yeah, and that happened to just upstairs in one of the bedrooms, and the downstairs area. Everybody knew what was going on with the children, and it was just part of the accepted knowledge of what would go on. It was kind of like what they knew was an initiation into a Masonic order or something like that. It's like, yeah, that's just part of it. And it was just the way they operated. And it was absolutely horrific for me, but it was how I was used throughout my MK Ultra mind control victimization, which happened right up until 1988. So it was like the first 30 years of my life were just filled with extensive trauma.
As we peel back yet another layer of the veil shrouding Mackinac Island's hidden horrors, let's confront the chilling lexicon of symbols employed by those who prey on children. Symbols documented not by fringe theorists, but by the Federal Bureau of Investigation itself. In a 2007 unclassified intelligence bulletin titled Symbols and Logos Used by Pedophiles to Identify Sexual Preferences, the FBI exposed a covert visual code used by pedophiles to signal their depraved inclinations to one another while evading detection. This document, part of the Innocent Images National Initiative aimed at combating child exploitation, details how these emblems, that have been etched into rings, pendants, coins, and online avatars, serve as badges of identification among networks of pedophiles that produce, distribute, and trade in child abusive material. The bulletin outlines several key symbols, each tailored to specific predatory preferences. The boy lover or B logo features a blue triangle known as the spirangle within a triangle symbolizing an adult male encircling a smaller boy. Often rounded into spirals and found on jewelry or coins, its variant, the little boy lover logo, depicts a smaller spiral within a larger one, denoting attraction to even younger victims. Similarly, the girl lover or G logo uses interlocking hearts, pink for the adult female and smaller for the child. Sometimes fashioned into pendants or etched into rings, these aren't random designs. They're deliberate markers that are used by pedophiles that allow predators to recognize allies in public spaces or online forums. Behind these symbols lurk real architects of evil and wickedness, men and women who not only adopted but propagated them through underground networks. Take Jeffrey Brisson and Harold Sperling, who created these symbols that were arrested in January 2008 in New Britain, Connecticut on multiple counts of child exploitation offenses. And I will tell you, these offenses are horrific. Brisson, known online as the Night Raven, and Sperling's alias Ashtram were key figures in a place called boylover.net, a notorious pedophile forum where the bee logo was prominently displayed in banners and user icons. Authorities uncovered videos and images that they produced sharing across these dark web communities. Brisson was sentenced to 45 years in prison in 2009, while Sperling faced similar charges. Their arrest stemming from a broader FBI crackdown that linked their activities to the very symbols the Bureau had warned about. These weren't isolated offenders. They were enablers, using sites like boylover.net, complete with its proud to be a boy lover banner featuring the Spy Wrangle logo. And also groups like NAMBLA, the National American Man-Boy Love Association, they would also use it to recruit, share, and normalize their crimes. There's another symbol known as Child Lover, or C logo, a butterfly composed of 4 hearts, one larger blue and one larger pink, representing adult male and females, encasing smaller hearts, one pink and one blue for boys and girls. According to the FBI, this symbol signifies non-preferential child abusers, those drawn to victims regardless of gender. And it's tied to groups like the Child Love Online Media Activism, CLOMAL, CLOMAL, which advocates for child love through blogs, websites, and forums. Predators embed it in jewelry, tattoos, coins, and even children's toys. If you recall the 2016 scandal where a pink monster truck toy sold at rallies bore a spiral design mistaken for a pedophile marker, sparking outrage and recalls of the toys online. It's used in avatars and signatures to signal safe spaces for sharing abusive material, often disguised amid innocent imagery to evade filters. The butterfly's deceptive beauty masks its purpose, a call to like-minded monsters and evil fluttering through digital shadows and real-world encounters. As we delve deeper, this butterfly emblem intertwines with the murky depths of Project Monarch, an alleged CIA offshoot of MKUltra mind control experiments. Survivors like Kathy O'Brien describe Monarch as a trauma-based programming system where victims, often children, are subjected to electroshock, drugs, and ritual satanic abuse to fracture their psyches into dissociative alter personalities programmable for espionage, sex slavery, or even worse. The butterfly symbolizes this transformation just as a caterpillar morphs into a winged creature. The victim's mind is shattered into multiple personalities and rebuilt, emerging compliant and amnesiac. O'Brien claims handlers use the butterfly imagery in programming sessions, embedding it as a trigger for obedience, drawing from Nazi experiments from the Hitler-Himmler research and also things that were done by Joseph Mengele that influenced U.S. programs like MKUltra and Project Monarch. Declassified MKUltra documents hint at such techniques, though Monarch remains shrouded in deniability. Yet the symbol persists in survivor testimonies linking pedophile networks to government-sanctioned control. Now consider Mackinac Island's peculiar fixation with these very creatures, particularly the monarch butterfly, a name that echoes Project Monarch itself. The island boasts not one, but 2 dedicated butterfly conservatories, the original Mackinac Island Butterfly House and Insect World, opened in 1989, where thousands of live butterflies, including monarchs, flutter amid tropical gardens and wings of Mackinac, a glass-enclosed haven promoting nature-inspired gifts. And serene encounters with these insects, local businesses peddle butterfly-themed merchandise in stores like the Butterfly House gift shop, stocked with monarch-adorned boxes, jewelry, and decor. But it doesn't stop there. Social media feeds from island enterprises are rife with images of monarchs, posts showing migrations, close-ups of wings, promotions urging visitors to witness the transformation. Adding to this intrigue, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, through the Mackinac Island State Park Commission, has actively planted milkweed, the essential host plant for monarch caterpillars, in areas like a meadow near the island's airport as part of efforts to bolster the declining butterfly population, drawing swarms of these symbolic insects to the very heart of this secluded enclave. Why this obsession on a remote isle, already steeped in isolation and elite gatherings? In the conspiracy lens, it's no coincidence. The monarch butterfly serves as a subtle nod to programming and mind control, a living emblem masking trafficking routes and mind-shattering satanic rituals amid the island's Victorian charm. As these symbols alight on Mackinac's shores, one must ask, are they mere attractions or signals beckoning the shadows?
Yeah, I've seen the monarch symbolism, and that's just their signal. Again, more you know, more you see. The signal that the monarch MK Ultra program is in full use there. So that means there's going to be slaves brought in, like I was, the little bitty children, and at whatever age they want to use them. Usually right up until around age 30, and by then they usually consider us used up and disposed of. So many didn't survive. I feel very, very fortunate to have survived and to have healed. And it's because of those who don't have a voice, because of those, who are enduring that today. It's got to stop. It's got to stop now, and it stops with awareness. So, I really appreciate this opportunity to raise that awareness so other people will follow suit and take action like you're so bravely doing.
What I'm about to reveal to you is going to chill you to your very core. In the misty veil of Mackinac Island, perched atop a foreboding mound like a sentinel of secrets, stands the Grand Hotel, a glittering facade hiding unspeakable horrors. But this mound is no ordinary hill. It's an ancient Indian burial mound, desecrated by the builders who unearthed countless human remains during construction. Bones of the long-forgotten dead that they simply couldn't or wouldn't remove all of. Whispers persist that those skeletal remnants still lie entombed beneath the hotel's foundations, fueling the demonic energies that permeate this place. This is no ordinary resort. It's a nexus of human trafficking orchestrated by the occult elite. Those shadowy puppeteers who pull the strings of power, perhaps drawing unholy power from the violated graves below. Listen carefully, everybody, for the signs are everywhere, etched in stone, paint, and symbol, whispering of darkness that devours the innocent. Let us begin with the porch, that sprawling veranda where the elite sip their cocktails in the front of the Grand Hotel under the guise of leisure. The hotel officially claims it's 660 feet long, but that's a calculated deception. Measure it truly, and it's 666 feet. Yes, 666, the number of the beast. A deliberate invocation of ancient evil, luring the unwary into its grasp. This isn't coincidence, everybody. It's a marker, a signal to those in the know that this place is consecrated to forces beyond our sight, forces of darkness, forces of evil. When you venture inside, you see that the walls themselves scream warnings. The striped colored wallpaper on each upper floor is eerily similar to the stripes on the main building with the golden dome on Epstein Island. These are just different colors. A haunting echo of that infamous den of depravity where the elite indulged in their darkest vices. At the Grand Hotel, weird paintings of children adorn almost every corner. Innocent faces frozen in eerie poses, their eyes following you as if pleading for rescue. And then there's the painting of the jester, that mocking figure with a twisted grin, evoking the royal order of jesters, a secretive Masonic offshoot shrouded in scandal and whispers of depravity. It's all so symbolic, so deliberate, a coded language for the initiated, hinting at rituals where the vulnerable are mere playthings. And in the main lobby, looming like a carnival of nightmares, stands a Ferris wheel festooned with teddy bears. That's right, teddy bears. Those cuddly figures that they're twisting into something sinister. Symbolic of the pedo bear, that vile emblem perpetrators use to hide their predatory actions in plain sight, mocking the innocents they seek to destroy. Deeper still, the hotel harbors private clubs and exclusive rooms, sealed off from the public eye, perched ominously above the conference center. What transpires in those forbidden chambers? Your guess is as good as mine. But could it be meetings of the occult elite? I don't think there's a doubt in that, where deals are struck in blood and silence. Now descend to the Gerald Ford Conference Center and gaze upward if you dare. At the pinnacle looms a golden double-headed eagle, the unmistakable emblem of the 33rd degree in Scottish Rite Freemasonry, the highest echelon of the Blue Lodge. This isn't decoration. It's a declaration of allegiance to a brotherhood that spans centuries, weaving webs of control from the shadows. The floors beneath your feet tell their own tale of duality and deception. Masonic, white and black checkered patterns sprawl everywhere in the Grand Hotel, symbolizing the eternal battle of light and dark for a Freemason, good and evil. A core tenet of Freemasonry, where initiates tread the path of hidden knowledge. And consider the chess motifs. Chess pieces themselves are steeped in Masonic lore, representing the hierarchical orders, pawns that are sacrificed to kings. Outside, a giant chess set mocks us all, a blatant symbol for these Masons who view humanity as their chessboard, moving pieces in a grand, sinister game. But the true horror lies in the human cost. The Grand Hotel hires seasonal workers from over 30 countries around the world. A blatant act of racism that cloaks deeper exploitation. It almost seems as if it's on purpose. They're trying to take you back to colonial days, if you know what I'm trying to say. These souls are treated like disposable shadows, herded into slum-like housing that reeks of neglect and despair. I spoke to one such worker while I was visiting, her voice trembling in the cold Michigan wind. She had no blanket in her apartment, only 2 thin sheets to use for warmth, begging the Grand Hotel employers for 7 agonizing days with no response whatsoever. Her heating broken in her run-down apartment. She shivered as the weather turned from warm to frigid, as it always does this time of year on the island. Fall's cruel bite sinking in, leaving her ill and vulnerable. This isn't mere oversight. It's an outrage, a deliberate degradation of humanity. And doesn't it reek of human trafficking? These workers isolated on an island, most of them under non-disclosure agreements, bound by poverty and control, their pleas echoing unanswered. We need to hold the Grand Hotel in Mackinac Island in general to a higher standard and call for transparency when it comes to their hiring practices and how they treat their workers. All these workers are trapped in a modern-day slave system orchestrated by the elite. Adding to the irony, during my visit, an FBI conference was taking place in the Grand Hotel, unfolding in those very halls. Shouldn't these agents, sworn protectors, be investigating the trafficking riddling this place instead of lounging in luxury? It's unethical at best, complicit at worst. A vacation veiled as duty, while victims suffer in silence. The rich snobs who rule this domain gaze down their noses at anyone deemed lesser, their haughty stares a barrier to truth. They glide through the opulence, oblivious or indifferent to the underbelly of what's really going on Mackinac Island and the Grand Hotel. And speaking of underbellies, consider the back alley slinking behind the hotel, a clandestine path perfect for smuggling victims in an unseen way. Guests none the wiser. Below, service tunnels snake through the massive mound the hotel crowns, a labyrinth of passages leading to hidden rooms, factual chambers documented in the hotel's own blueprints, though the hotel vehemently denies their existence in those very plans, insisting they're not there at all. But oh, they are, just cleverly covered up and obscured to evade prying eyes, and maintain the veil of secrecy, ripe for unspeakable acts away from the light. Who oversees this den of iniquity? KSL Capital out of Colorado, the faceless entity that owns the Grand Hotel. And let's not forget Michael Mohap, the KSL principal who took a peculiar interest in the property, sniffing around like a hound on a scent, perhaps ensuring the occult machinery hums undisturbed. My friends, the Grand Hotel isn't a haven. It's a haunted fortress where the occult elite traffics souls under the guise of grandeur. The symbols scream it, the suffering confirms it. Wake up before the shadows claim us all. The truth is out there. Something that I think it's important is to touch upon why the Boy Scouts of America are actually staying on Mackinac Island. Those emblems of youthful virtue are entangled in a web of suspicion that reeks of something far darker than their polished flag ceremonies. Since 1929, these young souls have been drawn to this island, a place crawling with elite gatherings and occult undertones. Why are they here? What lurks behind their patriotic duties? The facts are unsettling, and the symbols scream of a hidden agenda that threatens to ensnare the innocent. The Mackinac Island Scout Service Camp, also called the Governor's Honor Guard, has operated since 1929, when 8 Eagle Scouts, including a young Gerald Ford, were commissioned by then Governor Fred Greene to serve as honor guards at Fort Mackinac. From Memorial Day to Labor Day, roughly 60 scouts per week aged 10 to 17 descend on the island, raising and lowering 22 American flags daily at sites like Fort Mackinac, the Visitor Center, and the Fort Cemetery. They act as guides, answer tourist questions, and tackle service projects like cleaning and painting, contributing an estimated 30,000 hours of volunteer labor each summer. Housed in the Scout Barracks, built in 1934 by the Civilian Conservation Corps near the fort, they stay for 1-week rotations, with 14 troops cycling through each season. Girl Scouts joined them in 1974, expanding the program, but the question remains, why this island, a magnet for the powerful and their shadowy dealings? In 1950, a Statue of Liberty replica, the only one in Michigan, was erected by the Boy Scouts of America at the Mackinac Island Marina, part of their 40th anniversary Strengthen the Arm of Liberty campaign, which saw 200 such statues placed across 39 states. This 8.5-foot, 290-pound copper figure, dedicated by the Scenic Trails Council, supposedly honors the Scouts' patriotic service. But why place such a monument on this remote island, unless it's a coded signal to the elite? And it's right on the waterfront where they have the statue, a marker of their dominion, cloaked in the guise of freedom, where young scouts are paraded as props in a larger, sinister play. Then there's the oversized bronze bust of Gerald Ford, installed in 2013. Gerald Ford is a known pedophile, from what Kathy O'Brien has been telling us. And this was installed in 2013 outside the Scout Barracks, commemorating his 1929 service as an Eagle Scout. Crafted by Thomas Moran, it looms as a tribute to Ford's scouting legacy, strategically placed to watch over the barracks, or perhaps to oversee something more nefarious. Why immortalize one scout in such grandeur, unless it's a nod to their elite networks that bind this island to power, a reminder of who controls the board? Now the darkness deepens. The Boy Scouts of America have a grim history of vulnerability to abuse. From 1947 to 2010, over 12,000 children were allegedly abused by Scout leaders or peers, documented in the BSA's perversion files. By 2020, over 82,000 abuse claims surfaced, leading to a $2.46 billion bankruptcy settlement. These weren't anomalies, but a systematic failure, with predators shielded by institutional silence. On Mackinac Island, these scouts, some as young as 10 years old, are isolated, far from home, in a tightly controlled environment with no cars, limited oversight, and elite gatherings swirling around them. The Grand Hotel, with its hidden rooms, back alleys, and occult symbols, hosts the conferences for presidents, senators, and moguls. Hillary and Bill Clinton, Mike Pence, and more, while these vulnerable children toil nearby. Doesn't this scream opportunity for something fishy? These young scouts, entrusted to adults in this remote setting, are prime targets for exploitation, potentially even human trafficking, given the island's history of secrecy and elite control. Their innocence is a perfect cover for predators who might lurk among the powerful, using the Scout service as a facade to mask unspeakable acts. The Statue of Liberty and Ford's bust aren't mere tributes, they're markers of a hidden agenda, signaling to the elite that Mackinac is their playground. Where the vulnerable are exposed, the Scouts' presence, their youth, their isolation, it all feels too convenient, too orchestrated. Something sinister festers on this island, where the powerful gather and the innocent serve. Wake up, my friends, before these children become pawns in a game we dare not name. The truth lurks in the shadows of the flags they raise. Today I stand before you to shed light on a matter that has been shrouded in controversy, misinformation, and outright deception. It's a story about a license plate, a motorcade, and a deliberate attempt to obscure the truth. I'm talking about the infamous Boy Love license plate that appeared in a photograph of Vice President Mike Pence's motorcade, an image hosted on none other than the official Trump White House Flickr page. Let me be clear, this image is undoctored. Trust me, I've checked. It's unedited and it reveals a truth that some would rather keep hidden. Let's start with the photograph itself. If you visit the Trump White House Flickr archive and zoom in on the image from Mike Pence's visit to the Fleetwood Diner in Lansing, Michigan on February 25th, 2020, you'll see it. A GMC Yukon XL, a staple of the vice presidential motorcade with a license plate that clearly reads Boy Love. Yes, you heard that right. The plate is unmistakable when you examine the original photo, the high-resolution image. This is not a blurry snapshot or a doctored meme. This is an official photograph straight from the Trump administration's own digital archives. Yet, across the internet, you'll find claims that this image is fake, that the plate was photoshopped, or that it never existed. Why? Because some want to cover up what's right there in plain sight. Let's talk about the GMC Yukon XL for a moment. This isn't just any vehicle, it's a workhorse of the Secret Service, frequently used in vice presidential and presidential motorcades for its size, durability, and ability to carry agents and equipment. On that day in Lansing, the Yukon XL was part of Pence's security detail, a testament to the high-stakes logistics of protecting a vice president. But what makes this vehicle stand out isn't just its presence, it's that license plate, Boy Love, staring back at us from an official government photo. The internet would have you believe this is a hoax, but the evidence is undeniable when you see the original image for yourself. Now some might ask, how could such a plate end up on a Secret Service vehicle? The answer lies in a lesser-known practice of the Secret Service. For security reasons and to commemorate special occasions, the Secret Service is known to switch out license plates on motorcade vehicles. This isn't speculations, it's a documented tactic. They might use plates from the host state, like Michigan, to blend in with local traffic or mark a significant event. In this case, the Boy Love plate could have been a deliberate choice, perhaps tied to an event or symbolic gesture we're not privy to. But instead of an honest discussion, what do we get? A flood of online narratives claiming the plate was edited, trying to erase what's clearly visible in the unedited Flickr image. This brings us to Mike Pence's history with Michigan, particularly Mackinac Island, a place that holds a special place in the hearts of Michiganders. Mackinac Island has banned motorized vehicles since 1898, preserving its charm with horse-drawn carriages and bicycles. Yet in 2019, Mike Pence made history, and not the good kind, by bringing the first ever 8-vehicle motorcade to the island for the Mackinac Republican Leadership Conference. This included a GMC Yukon XL, among other SUVs ferried over by the boat. Rumbling down Cadet Avenue to the Grand Hotel where Mike Pence was staying, this wasn't just a break from tradition. It was a shock to residents who cherished the island's car-free heritage. Former presidents like Gerald Ford respected this ban, traveling by horse-drawn carriage in 1975, even though Gerald Ford was a sleazebag. But Pence's motorcade, complete with that Yukon XL, sparked outrage. Some called it sacrilege, others disrespectful, and yet the Secret Service justified it as a security necessity, possibly involving those same plate switching tactics to ensure Pence's safety on an island unaccustomed to such displays. But Pence's connection to Mackinac Island doesn't end there. He's visited the island multiple times, not just as a vice president, but also in his youth. Growing up in Indiana, a stone's throw from Michigan, during his 2019 visit, he didn't just stay at the historic Grand Hotel. He also met with the Reed City Boy Scouts, a group from Michigan, engaging with them as part of his public outreach. This wasn't a one-off trip. Pence has a history with the island, making his decision to bring an 8-vehicle motorcade even more striking. Why disregard a century-old tradition? Why the need for such a show of force on a 3.8 square mile island? And why in another instance does a vehicle in his motorcade bear a plate as provocative as Boy Love? The internet's response to that plate has been a masterclass in deflection. Fact checkers and media outlets have rushed to label images of the boilerplate as doctored, pointing to memes and altered screenshots, but they conveniently ignore the original Flickr image, untouched and unedited, sitting on an official government platform. This isn't about a random SUV in the background of a photo. It's about a vehicle in Pence's motorcade, captured in an official record. The campaign to dismiss it as a hoax is nothing shorter of a cover-up, an attempt to rewrite what's plain to see. Zoom in on that image yourself. Don't take my word for it. The truth is there, in high resolution, for anyone willing to look before they take it down. So what does this all mean? It means we need to question the narratives we're fed. It means we need to dig deeper when we're told something is fake or misinformation. Mike Pence's motorcade on Mackinac Island, his stays at the Grand Hotel, his meetings with the Reed City Boy Scouts, and that unmistakable boy love plate in Lansing, they're pieces of a puzzle that demand scrutiny. The Secret Service's plate switching practices might explain the plate, but they don't explain the silence, the denials, or the rush to bury the story. I urge you to seek the truth. Go to the Trump White House Flickr page yourself. Find that photo from February 25th, 2020. Zoom in on the GMC Yukon XL in the background and see the license plate for yourself. Don't let the internet's lies obscure what's right in front of you. Mike Pence's actions, from breaking Mackinac's traditions to the curious details of his motorcade, deserve our attention. Let's hold these in power accountable, not just for their decisions, but for the truths they try to hide. Let us turn our focus in this documentary to St. Anne's Jesuit Church, that edifice of deception nestled in the heart of this forsaken island known as Mackinac, a beacon not of salvation, but of exploitation and dark dominion. Built on the blood-soaked soil of indigenous lands, this church stands as a testament to the Jesuits' insidious grip, preying on the desperate and the downtrodden while whispering promises of mercy. The evidence is irrefutable, etched in schedules, symbols, and sinister oaths that echo through the ages. Consider the church's so-called charity in feeding the island's workers. Every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. during the peak summer season, St. Anne's offers a free meal to all island laborers. Food donated by local restaurants, prepared and served by volunteers. And that's if the laborers can make it to the meal at 5:30 p.m. On the surface, it seems benevolent, but dig deeper and it reeks of calculated control. This isn't altruism, it's a lure for the impoverished workforce that sustains this elite playground. Mackinac Island's labor force is riddled with poverty. 17.3% of residents live below the poverty line. And seasonal workers, many on H-2B visas from abroad, face a grim job market with inadequate housing and wages that barely stave off despair. The Jesuits, those masters of manipulation, take full advantage, drawing these vulnerable souls into their web under the guise of sustenance, binding them with dependency while the occult elite feasts above. Wander around the back of St. Anne's and the symbols reveal more. There, in a window, gleams the IHS logo, the Jesuit emblem, a coded sigil of their unholy authority, staring out like an unblinking eye over the island's secrets. But the true horror lies in the black oath of the Jesuits, that blood-curdling vow sworn in secrecy. Listen to these chilling words. I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war secretly or openly against all heretics and Protestants. And it also says to rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women and crush their infants' heads against the walls. Wow. This isn't ancient folklore. It's the blueprint of their fanaticism, a pledge to eradicate, dissent, and sow terror, all while cloaked in clerical robes. The island's Catholic cemetery bears silent witness to their enduring presence. Jesuit graves dot St. Anne's Cemetery. Remnants of missionaries like those who first invaded these shores, their bones mingling with the desecrated earth of indigenous burial grounds. The Jesuits dominate Mackinac Island, their influence woven into its fabric over 3 centuries. From the earliest missionaries allied with the Huron to the priests and settlers who followed, many Jesuits reside here still, pulling strings from the shadows, their numbers ensuring control over souls and soil alike. And why this obsession? The Jesuits' dark fascination with MKUltra, mind control runs deep. They partnered with the CIA in those clandestine experiments, harnessing psychological torment to bend wills and shatter minds, all in pursuit of total dominion. Mackinac Island, with its isolated strategic perch and history of indigenous subjugation, draws them like moths to a flame. A perfect laboratory for control, where poverty and isolation make the masses pliable. Finally, consider Margaret Dowd, the nation's longest-standing mayor. Her reign, a staggering half-century over this island fiefdom, tied inextricably to St. Anne's Church. She never misses a Sunday Mass there. Her family roots entwined with Catholic institutions like St. Mary's Academy, and her political web connecting to religious and elite figures who perpetuate the status quo. Is it coincidence or complicity in the grand design? My friends, St. Anne's is no sanctuary. It's a stronghold of shadows, where poverty is weaponized, oaths bind the ruthless, and mind control lurks in every whispered prayer. Wake up before the Jesuits' grip tightens forever. The truth awaits in the fog, shrouded graves, and hidden windows.
I don't have any firsthand experience in Mackinac Island. Let me make that clear. That being said, just from having been familiar with this situation and talking to several survivors that do, it's pretty clear. What these perpetrators, what these culprits in Project Monarch and other aspects of the dirty underbelly are looking for is contained situations. They try to do things through what's called a sterile protocol, right? Where they can do it as clean with as much cover and, just be able to get away and carry on with what's going on. Mackinac Island is unique because it's a contained situation. You have people look for a lot of places like census designated areas, right? Unincorporated areas to where it's kind of between the lines with like law enforcement that would respond, things like this, to where it's dwindled down and they can have as few as people as possible in strategic positions because that just makes it easier. Obviously, Mackinac Island is unique. There's no vehicles being in use on the island. It's kind of like one way in, one way out. Maybe obviously there's, you can fly in, things like this, but obviously you got people ferrying in, so on and so forth. So it's a very controlled situation, right? And you have people, like you said, that, there's only one person showing the ID on the ferry. They can bring whoever with them that's completely under the cover. These things can look like family vacations. They can look like whatever. They do have some civilian traffic, but if it was exclusively non-civilian and it was completely privatized, it would be a little bit easier to track. What these civilians can become is actual cover and obfuscate the actual ongoings that's really happening, right? The dirty underbelly here. So it's simple. They're obviously running some of this. When it comes to, let's just boil it down, going to Project Monarch and related, they're throwing these parties, they're having these events, they're bussing, ferrying people, flying people in, right? And taking care of the dirty business. What goes on. You hear about a lot of this. You hear about the blackmail. You hear about the sex parties. You hear about the pedophilia. You hear about this. But okay, what's really going on? Is it just these rich people? Is just these jesters, these odd fellows? Is it just these elite getting their rocks off? No. There's much more than that. What obviously goes on is it is the testing, training, utilization, and even handing off of these Monarch assets. Some of these young children are being trained. They're being put through this trauma. They're seeing if they are viable assets to go on and carry out further work. If they're not, unfortunately, they become more expendable. If they are, who knows what's happened? The sky's the limit, unfortunately, in the worst way. When you have a lot of this going on, a lot of this, you'll have the VIPs meeting there. Again, why there? Because it's a controlled situation, okay? Because they have to lock down fewer areas to make it completely secure. And they know who's coming in, they know who's going out to a large extent. How many of their own people or controlled parties do they have to have in place? Less than in the rest of the continental United States, right? It's obviously very secluded. And so, you bring these children to it and, say, unfortunately, that like a young girl is used, and there's a traumatic sexual experience that she's forced to partake in. One that could just be, unfortunately, someone getting the rocks off like they, like we've discussed. But more often than not, when it comes to this, what's going on is that they will either be part of a blackmail operation, or also layered to where there'll be a blackmail operation being tested or being handed off. Because what happens is, say, we've talked, for example, that, Kathy O'Brien had experience with some VIPs, Gerald Ford, Kissinger, other people, and Bird, right? And Bird ended up essentially, for all, I hate to use these words like this, but just, for communication, owned her. Well, what happens when you own a monarch slave? What's part of that process? Unfortunately, just like a trained dog, say you have a trained canine for personal and property protection, you have people that put them through the process of training, grooming them, and building them up and teaching them the commands, but then they need to be handed off. And what happens when they're handed off? Well, you have to learn the commands, you go through a process, and it's kind of a formal event. The same happens with a monarch slave. What happens is there is a handoff, you learn the commands, and you might even create and embed your own, so the last person you took them through don't have that backdoor access if you're keeping the same commands, because they're already bonded to the people you got them from. So what there will be is a trauma bonding situation, right? And in the background, there may be symbols, there may be colors, there may be repetitive phrases, there may be a certain act, and through that act, and whether it's sex, whether it's ritualistic, there's different areas you can go through, but essentially that's what happens, is there will be a trauma bonding aspect through the new handler, the new master, and the slave, the asset. You can use any variety of terminology, any way to articulate this. There's different themed nomenclature. But don't get lost in it, right? These things get divided like Babel, so people get confused when it's really all the same thing. Whether you look at it through the ritualistic aspect, you say, oh, people are under the spell, right? Whether you look at through like military intelligence, say, this is an asset, the monarch terminology, the modern day slavery, whether this is your slave, you're their handler, you're their master, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing, and there is a handoff process. So, really, just Mackinac Island is a completely contained area where they have it locked down, and they can, control the variables, and to ensure they are getting, carrying on with this under the cover, under complete control in a contained environment, and with as sterile of a protocol as possible. They control as many variables as possible so they can do this undetected, so they can continue doing this. This all boils into, to the same really aspects, which is a completely contained situation. And so here you have it. You have the owner running, Hoffman, you said, with both ferry companies. Okay, so they're controlling the main transportation to and from, because obviously you have civilians using that, and they can easily track that. They control it. Obviously, they have say-so of the staff. Who do they get for the staff? People that are controllable, okay? Whether it's through financial means, largely the financial employment means, you can control who goes and who doesn't. And it's kind of like unspoken rules, because even if someone comes that's like, say, they're obviously vetting people that come in to work, but if they're kind of not willing to color inside the lines, or like, they're seeing something that doesn't sit right with them, they have the kind of the pressure and the kind of like unspoken rules that are just passively enforced from the rest of the staff, and then it only gets, more so up the chain, right? Obviously, you have people flying in and out. That's kind of already typically going to be people more involved with the other end. Not to say that there's not rich civilians that have nothing to do with any of this that can fly in or out. Again, that's easily tracked, and it's going to be a lot less. You get there to the workers at the hotel. Yes, are they going to perpetuate certain, certain issues and look for a specific demographic that they can not only exploit but control? Absolutely. That's the way that this thing goes. And it's just every single aspect. They have their hands in the transportation to and from They have their hands in and control of who's actually staffed there, in the transportation, in the lodging. And then when you get to any local law enforcement, right, any security, again, they're going to have that as a controlled situation. It has to be less and less. What happens if someone needs to report something? Well, it's a lot easier for them to lock down communication. It's a lot easier for them to lock down transportation. It's a lot easier for them to cover this up, to keep it in-house, to, clean up a situation if it does go, beyond in-house. They have time and the means to kind of clean things up and control it, even if outside parties are coming in for a real investigation. And not that they obviously don't have, webs going through the network, to even cover as much of that as possible, but it's just a completely controlled situation. You got to understand too, like, this isn't new. This has been going on. People say, okay, so people have talked about Mackinac Island a long time ago. Like, why would they still be doing things there? Well, because it's such a contained situation, and it's been going on, and over time, they're able to bring more people in, control the situation, and just kind of expound on what they already have going over time, just till it's completely under the thumb. It's from A to Z. It's all aspects of it. And, I don't know how long this has been running for, but it's been decades. So, another thing with Mackinac Island is that there is a heavy presence of the Boy Scouts of America. And what may not be known by some is that the Boy Scouts, the Eagle Scouts, the Girl Scouts, they're tied in with the state. Just recently, there was an absolutely massive lawsuit going on. I think it was $2.8 billion, with over 80,000 victims of the Boy Scouts of America, to where over time there had been 80,000 reported victims of sexual abuse and so on and so forth. And this is, unfortunately, again, part of this is this early grooming, early conditioning. You have things like the Order of the Arrow within. Not that every single Boy Scout, Eagle Scout is going to have this experience, but what they do is, within this group, they test subjects, they put them through the paces, and they funnel P1s, they route P1s to different places. Okay, they have a subject, okay, this kid seems to have the predispositions of dissociation. Clearly, he had some early childhood trauma, whether it was through generational, hereditary dissociation, and then he had abuse, whether it was an early childhood accident, whatever it is. Once that box gets ticked, it gets ticked, okay? Then the next step, okay, how is this child's family? Is this child's family, unfortunately, lower class? Are they poor? Are we able to control them through financial means? Are we able to offer them opportunities that they can't refuse because they wouldn't be able to otherwise have them for themselves? Is their parents a pushover? Are their parents kind of absentees? Again, so on and so forth. It's just they go through every single aspect to see how viable it is to take this child for an asset, for a subject, and then will continue to funnel and route them. They don't try to force a situation to such an extent that it's going to be a fight all the way through. That's not how you continue this clean operation, and it's not how you get away scot-free. You find viable children that, again, have the predisposition of the dissociation to other aspects, and then also have parents that are either absentee or otherwise controllable. And just the heavy presence of all this on Mackinac Island speaks for itself. I mean, with all the reports from different survivors and other aspects, it's pretty clear how this is feeding through. You have a few different angles of this, so. Organized safety was created, it's basically inspired by and expounding upon the work of Valerie Wolf at the 1995 ACHRE. And that's where child victim testimony was presented at the Presidential Hearing Committee. in relation to radiation experimentation and other aspects of MK Ultra. So what she presented was corroborating, and not just corroborating, but blindly corroborating testimony and supplemental evidence from subjects, from victims across the nation that had been servicing a different trauma therapist and just standard therapists, and obviously routed to trauma therapists and so on and so forth. And they had been, without knowing each other, saying the same information, whether it be of perpetrators' people, whether it be of locations, places, or actual program names that were MK Ultra sub-projects, and then more specific offshoots in, programs that are even derived from MK Ultra research, right? So what we decided to do, because there is an issue with reporting. Sometimes people are not comfortable reporting under their own identity. Sometimes people go to report and they're a little bit overwhelmed with traumatic upheaval, and it's hard for them to properly articulate, and sometimes they're not taken credibly. Sometimes it can be a harrowing experience to report, and sometimes the receiving end can even be negative, and it can be a traumatic experience of itself. That's aside from there possibly being risks that people are not prepared to take, not comfortable taking, and just so on and so forth. So what we did was we designed a system for anonymous reporting, and the reporting form itself is encrypted as well. So as far as security, it's as safe and as anonymous as can be. And you can report a person of interest, and there are forms, so it takes all the details. You don't have to think about what to include as much. You will be prompted for it. So it's kind of like as easy as possible. You get walked through the process. Location of interest, again, with, prompts for all the related, items, or general reports of interest if it doesn't quite cleanly fall into those two categories. And what you can do is you can opt in to be notified if there was corroborating information reported from another party. So you do not have to identify yourself, and we actually recommend that you don't identify yourself. But say you name a specific location, a specific person, and then someone else has as well, we recommend making a new Proton email address or another, encrypted email, or you can just get any email address, but make a new one separate from yours so it doesn't link up with your own email. Make sure you don't lose the password, make sure you keep it. And if we get something that matches your report, then we will notify you. Then perhaps if you want to network and talk to these people and come together, or build a case, whether it's, civil and blind, and preponderance of evidence, or whether it's criminal and, burden of proof, we can kind of build that up. It's also just a way to meet other survivors that have went through what you went through, so on and so forth. But you can opt in for notification if your information that you reported is corroborated. So it's a way for survivors to network. It's a way for cases to be built. And it's just a safe, anonymous way to report. Again, if you do opt in for being notified, and there's many people naming the same things, there'll be a liaison that vets people before, we even recommend meeting, and it's just basically as safe and as vetted as a process as possible. It's just really as low impact and as safe as possible, survivor-friendly way of reporting and then even pursuing justice. In addition to that, even if it's not corroborated and there's not an opportunity for that, it is still helping us essentially map out the network and gain a better understanding and move towards pursuing justice in any way possible. So, if you have any information to report, we ask you go to organizesafety.org. And again, you can report a person of interest, a location of interest, or a general report of interest. If anybody would like to help with this endeavor otherwise, as well at organizesafety.org, you can go to Help Organize Safety and contact us through that. And if you would like to link up and, help us get the word out, or, other forms of helping the movement.
I want to show you how deep this rabbit hole truly goes. A rabbit hole that's shrouded in the shadows, lurking within a tale that stretches from a troubling past to the dark shores of Mackinac Island. Today we dig into questions about power, connections, and what might be concealed beneath the polished surface. Let's start at the roots. Picture a 19th century author named Horatio Alger, whose name became tied to stories of young boys clawing their way up through grit and guidance from older mentors. an author that wrote books like Ragged Dick from 1868. But beneath that narrative lies a disturbing shadow. In 1866, at age 32, Horatio Alger, serving as a Unitarian minister in Brewster, Massachusetts, caught the attention of his parishioners. They noticed he was always with the boys, spending far more time in their company than seemed usual, and they wondered why he didn't pursue the parish's eligible young women that were single, a natural expectation for a single, promising man of his stature. This unease led the church's male lay officers to form a committee and investigate. Parish records, unsealed in the 1970s, revealed a grim truth. Horatio Alger and the boys had engaged in acts too revolting to relate. The report named 2 boys, aged 13 to 15, and hinted at others. Confronted, Horatio Alger didn't deny it. He admitted to imprudence and fled Brewster that night, never returning. The parish alerted other Massachusetts congregations of his dismissal without specifics, but reported to the church hierarchy his offense as the abominable and revolting crime of gross familiarity with boys. No charges followed. The matter was swept under the rug internally, leaving some to ponder if this was a sign of elite protection at play. In New York, he wrote more youth stories and even took in boys to live with him in orphanages, and that seems rather strange, a detail that deepens the mystery. Now fast forward to an organization that carries his name, the Horatio Alger Association, formed in 1947. It claims to honor those who have overcome hardship, holding events in places like the Supreme Court, with prominent people that have ties to secret societies. It's rather interesting, people like Justice Clarence Thomas, a known member of the Bohemian Grove, who was a member of the Horatio Alger Association since 2000, but with Alger's past hanging over it, one can't help but question the choice of namesake. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Among its members are big names, people like Oprah Winfrey, who has known ties to Epstein Island. She was inducted in 1998. People like Buzz Aldrin, who is a known Freemason, joining in 2001. And David H. Hoffman, who is the majority owner of properties on Mackinac Island, Mackinac City, and St. Ignace that are off shores of Mackinac Island. He was added in 2023, nominated by a man named William F. Farley. He was a member since 1986. Some see this group as a gathering of influential figures, possibly echoing secret societies like the Illuminati or Freemasons, long whispered about in tales of hidden power and symbols. Let's go to David H. Hoffman's journey. His journey echoes that troubled myth. From a Missouri farm, he built DHR Global in 1989 in Chicago, facing employment disputes some view as hard-nosed tactics. Then Osprey Capital in 2002, and the Hoffman family of companies in 2015. This empire now spans over 200 brands across agriculture, aviation, hospitality, manufacturing, media, transportation, and more, employing tens of thousands of people in over 30 countries. His holdings are vast. Some of his holdings in California that are media assets in the Napa Valley region, things like the Napa Valley Register, St. Helena Star, the Lake County Record Bee inside Napa Valley, and the weekly Calistogan, just an hour and a half from the secretive Bohemian Grove in Monterey, California is where Napa Valley sits. Bohemian Grove is a place where powerful men meet, sparking whispers of elite gatherings, and we'll be getting into that soon. Now let's shift to Mackinac Island. A quiet retreat some see as charming, others a controlled domain. Hoffman's Hoffman family of companies started with Shepler's Mackinac Island Ferry in 2022, adding the Sip and Sail Cruises, the Mackinac Island Ferry Company, which is known as the White Star Line, in 2024, and the East Dock in 2025. Both ferry services now in one hand. With over 116 parcels of land, 51 buildings, 6,500 parking spaces, and docks in Mackinac City and St. Ignace. One family holds the island's gates. They also own the Story, Hoffman Michigan Media Group LLC bought Maurer Publishing in 2023, securing the newspapers the St. Ignace News and the Mackinac Island Town Crier, plus a printing shop and a tourism hub. This control over access and narrative might shape what's seen or said on the island. Local murmur about a shift to a more private elite domain, ferry and parking rate hikes, contested in a 2025 city lawsuit, raise access concerns. Then there are tales of stalled deals. In previous business workings that he has in Augusta and Clayton, they claim hundreds of thousands are owed for wineries, hotels, yachts, and office work, sparking liens and suits. Grape growers say misleading promises rotted their $170,000 harvests. A former ferry CEO of Mackinac Island hints at defamation and sabotage to justify firings and mergers. Could this be business as usual for the Hoffman family of companies, or a pattern of consolidating power while sidestepping obligations? Let's link it back to the association with its elite roster and Horatio Alger's shadowy past. Hoffman, nominated by William F. Farley, mingling, figuratively, with Winfrey and Aldrin, stirs thoughts of secret societies. The Illuminati, tied to Freemason lore, are said to thrive on hidden influence. A man from humble roots rises to control an isolated island's lifeblood, ferries, land, media, while connected to figures tied to controversial retreats. The Napa to Bohemian Grove drive, just an hour and a half, adds intrigue. Another elite gathering spot, some say beyond mere relaxation. David H. Hoffman's philanthropy to youth groups like the Boys and Girls Club in Naples, Florida, Children and Education Foundations, Washington County 4-H, and Type 1 Timer Hockey, echoing Horatio Alger's mentorship themes. Prompts wonder, could this setup, controlled access, private docks, shape narratives, hint at something unseen? Perhaps a new trafficking network that's being created, masked as tourism? No evidence, of course, but the patterns invite many, many questions. In the end, this is about curiosity, not about accusations. Is Hoffman just a shrewd investor lifting communities, or does his vast web, from ferries to farms, media to mansions, suggest a reach for deeper power? Maybe towards circles where secrets dwell. As we match Mackinac shores and Napa's proximity to Bohemian Grove, one ponders in a world of buried histories, what tales remain hidden.
Bill Farley, you love to cook or something?
I love this show.
Okay.
I just love this show.
You're at every cooking show.
I know.
You must cook a lot.
Cook a lot.
Okay. Bill's my neighbor. I'm trying to figure out every cooking show he's here. Is he I heard he has a lot of money. Are you looking for free food? What is it?
Now let us unravel the intricate tapestry surrounding William F. Farley, a man whose name echoes through the halls of power, yet whose connections raise questions that linger in the shadows. From his Rhode Island roots to the helm of Farley Industries and more, his story is one of ambition. But as we pull back the curtain, a web of influence emerges, tying him to some of the most exclusive and enigmatic circles in the world. Consider his ties to David H. Hoffman, a titan of finance and real estate of Mackinac Island. Both men are members of the elite Chicago Club, where Chicago's power brokers convene behind closed doors. But their connection doesn't end there. They're also linked through the Horatio Alger Association, a prestigious group honoring those who rise from rags to riches. With Farley inducted in 1986, the association's namesake, Horatio Alger, carries a troubling shadow. Dogged by historical allegations of inappropriate conduct with young boys, why would such prominent figures rally under the banner of a man with such an evil, controversial past? What unspoken bonds does this association forge? And then there's the curious detail of Farley Industries' headquarters being in Chicago, with zip code of 60606. Turn those numbers around, and you're left with 666, a number steeped in ancient symbolism and Satanism, the mark of the beast. This isn't a mere coincidence, everybody. It's a subtle hint of deeper forces at play. Farley's reach extends far beyond business, intertwining with icons of politics and fame. His own social media posts on X and Facebook reveal friendships with figures like Gerald Ford, Michael Jordan, Bill and Hillary Clinton, George H.W. Bush, Barbara Bush, George W. Bush, and Laura Bush. Presidents, athletes, and leaders who've shaped our world. In certain circles, whispers tie some of these names to darker networks, allegations of exploitation and hidden vices that refuse to stay buried. And consider this. Farley's home in Main sits just a half a mile from the Bush family compound in Kennebunkport. Such proximity begs the question, what shared secrets might these neighbors exchange? But the web grows denser. Farley is also a member of the Chicago Council on Foreign Relations, an Illuminati front organization, a powerful group shaping global policy and influence, where the elite discuss the world's future far from public scrutiny. What agendas are set in those closed-door meetings, and how do they align with Farley's other affiliations? His path also crosses sacred ground with ties to the Jesuits and the Catholic Church. Photographs capture him and his wife at the Vatican, standing in the heart of the ancient city-state, mingling with the keepers of centuries-old secrets. The Jesuits, with their global influence and storied history, even on Mackinac Island, are no strangers to intrigue. What draws a man like Farley to these enigmatic institutions? Yet the most unsettling connection lies in Farley's membership in the Bohemian Grove, a secluded sanctuary in California's redwood forest where the world's elite, like presidents, CEOs, artists, and celebrities, gather in a forest that's 65 miles north of San Francisco, California, in eerie secrecy. Imagine it. Ancient trees cloaking rituals under a moonlit sky, robed figures chanting around flickering fires beneath a stone owl. Hidden from the world, rumors swirl of ties to the Illuminati, that shadowy brotherhood said to orchestrate global affairs, with members allegedly converging here to shape destinies. Curiously, the Bohemian Grove lies not far from Napa Valley, where David H. Hoffman has amassed vast holdings, vineyards, media, tourism ventures, crafting a playground for the affluent. Is this proximity mere chance or a piece of a larger puzzle? That's 3 connections, everybody. The vicinity between Napa Valley, where David H. Hoffman amassed vast holdings, and the Bohemian Grove, where William F. Farley is a member. And then they also have ties to the Chicago Club and the Horatio Alger Association. It's getting pretty iffy, folks. At the heart of the Bohemian Grove lies the cremation of care ritual, performed before a towering 40-foot stone owl known as the Shrine. Its hollow eyes piercing the darkness. They say there are 2 rites, 2 rituals. One, a theatrical mock ceremony for guests, burning an effigy called dull care to shed worldly burdens. But darker whispers speak of a second secret ritual for the inner circle, a real human sacrifice, the embodiment of dull care, where the elite cast their sins, their cares for the world, and their darkest secrets onto a living soul and watch as it is consumed in flames. A purifying blaze that echoes through the night. My friends, as these threads intertwine, Farley's elite memberships, his proximity to power, his ties to shadowed rituals, what are we to make of it? The Chicago Council, the Vatican, the Bohemian Grove, these are not mere coincidences. The flames of that stone owl burn bright, and in their glow, we glimpse a truth too chilling to ignore. The embers are rising, and they threaten to consume us all unless we dare to face what lies within the smoke.
This is a 110% genuine Bohemian Grove map that I was able to obtain and get my hands on. It's a genuine Bohemian Grove map. And even down here, you can see on the southern part of the lake, the shrine, that is where the owl is, in front of the lake. And see, it says Lakeside Talks. That is the famous spot where Alex Jones had infiltrated the Bohemian Grove. So this is a genuine Bohemian Grove map. Now I want to show you something very interesting on the other side. There is an actual list of all the members of the Bohemian Grove in Northern California. Look, 2010 list of the camps and camp members and key to camp locations. So that would be the map on the back. Check this out here. We're going to go to F. Right at the top, we have William F. Farley, who is the mentor to David Hoffman, who is the majority investor on Mackinac Island, and he has a connection to Bill Farley, William F. Farley, aka William F. Farley, and he is a member of the Bohemian Grove, right there.
Under these friendly trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free. Ye shall burn me once again. Now but leave flame, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign. Ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire. Wow. Prince of all mortal wisdom, Owl of Bohemia, we beseech thee, begone, dull care. Fire shall have its will of thee. Begone, dull care, and all the winds make merry with thy ducks. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free.
As we conclude this eye-opening journey through the veiled corridors of power on Mackinac Island, let us linger on a pivotal thread that weaves the shadows into a clearer, more chilling tapestry. The undeniable connection between William F. Farley, the billionaire investor who built an empire on brands like Fruit of the Loom, amassing wealth through acquisitions and influence, and David H. Hoffman, the real estate tycoon whose Hoffman family of companies has funneled tens of millions of dollars into transforming Mackinac Island into a personal playground of luxury and control. But what truly binds these two titans? Is it just shared business acumen or something far more insidious, rooted in elite networks that operate beyond public scrutiny? Dig a little deeper and the links emerge. Both men are intertwined through the Horatio Alger Association, that exclusive society honoring rags to riches success stories among America's ultra-wealthy, and the Chicago Club, where the rich and the powerful in Chicago meet and tink glasses together and smoke cigars. Farley, inducted in 1986 into the Horatio Alger Association, even served as a mentor figure to Hoffman, who joined decades later and credits him as a roaming mentor, quote-unquote, in his path to billions. Coincidence? Or a deliberate alliance forged in the fires of mutual ambition? And why? Why would Farley, a documented attendee of the Bohemian Grove, that secretive redwood retreat where the world's most powerful men gather for rituals shrouded in mystery and whispers of ancient pagan rites, extend his gaze towards Hoffman, the very financier and investor reshaping Mackinac Island? This pristine Michigan gem, with its horse-drawn carriages and historic charm, now bears the imprint of Hoffman's empire. Ferry lines acquired, docks purchased, properties revitalized, all under the banner of preservation. But at what hidden cost? Is it mere investment or a strategic foothold in a web of influence that spans from California's shadowy groves to the Great Lakes' isolated shores? I think you see what we're facing now. A satanic onslaught, cloaked in the guise of philanthropy and progress. These connections aren't random. They're symptomatic of a deeper rot where elite circles like the Bohemian Grove allegedly serve as breeding grounds for deals that transcend business, delving into the occult and the profane. And if the devil is real, manifesting in the rituals, the secrecy, the unbridled power, then that means God is too. A divine counterforce calling us to action. We must rise against the evil of human trafficking, that monstrous underbelly that they exploit to fund their New World Order ambitions. It's the off-the-books currency of control. Vulnerable lives traded like commodities to bankroll shadowy advances in technology, media, and global dominance, all while the public remains blissfully unaware. But exposure is only the beginning. In the face of this this darkness, we find our true anchor, Jesus Christ. He stands as the ultimate beacon of hope, the Redeemer who conquered evil on the cross. Through faith in him, we gain the courage to dismantle these empires of sin, to rescue the exploited, and to reclaim our world for light and justice. Let us not falter. Let us pray, act, and prevail in his holy name. For in Jesus, the victory is already ours.